Namaste students, welcome to biology class. Today let us discuss about the chapter microbes in human welfare. Already we have completed two of the units, that is reproduction in organism, where we have discussed about four chapters, that is reproduction in organism, sexual reproduction in flowering plants, human reproduction as well as reproductive health. And we have also discussed about the unit genetics and evolution, where we have discussed about molecular basis of inheritance and principles of inheritance and variation. So now we are dealing with the unit biology in human welfare, where we have already discussed about one of the chapter, that is human health and disease. So now let us discuss about another chapter under this unit, that is microbes in human welfare. Already we have come across the term microbes. In human health and disease, we have discussed about various types of microorganisms or microbes. So microbes are minute organisms that cannot be visible with naked eyes. So we have to take the aid or help of certain instruments like microscopes, then we can observe these organisms. So such organisms which cannot be observed or which is not visible to our naked eyes and which can be observed only with the help of certain aids or instruments like microscopes are called as microorganisms or microbes. So similarly, like macroscopic organisms, it may be plants or animals, even these microscopic organisms or microorganisms or microbes play a major role in the environment. They form a major component of biological system on this earth. Okay, so microbes or microorganisms form major component. They form major component of biological system. We know that these microorganisms, most of the microorganisms or microbes are unicellular prokaryotic cells, and we have noted down that these unicellular prokaryotic cells are mainly included under a separate kingdom known as kingdom Monera. But there are certain microbes or microorganisms which may be having eukaryotic cells. For example, protozoans. There are also microbes including protozoans, and there are fungal species which are the microbes. So these fungal species as well as protozoans, they have a eukaryotic cell, but majority of the microbes have prokaryotic cell and they are separated and they have been placed under kingdom Monera. And under these microbes are of diverse varieties. They may include protozoans, bacteria, fungi, and there are certain living entities which can be considered as microbes. So microbes are of diverse varieties. Microbes are of diverse varieties. They include bacteria, they include fungi, protozoans, and there are certain viruses, viroids, and prions. So you have come across about all these types of organisms. We have discussed about these organisms even in class 11th or 1st PUC, and also in the previous chapter, that is human health and disease, we have discussed about these or we have come across about these organisms. So among these organisms, bacteria, fungi and protozoans are the microscopic living organisms, but these viruses, viroids and prions are not, we cannot consider them as living organisms. They are considered as living entities because they are acellular or non-cellular structures. So you know that viruses mainly have genetic material, and around the genetic material there is a protein coat. So what are these viroids? Viroids are the infectious genetic material, especially viroids have single stranded RNA as a genetic material and they do not have protein coat. Whereas prions are those entities which have got only infectious proteins. Okay, they are nothing but infectious protein. They do not have genetic material. So these are considered as living entities, whereas bacteria, fungi and protozoans are the living organisms. And you have to remember that some of these microbes, they cannot be cultured in laboratories. So they have to be cultured in living cell, or they usually grow in living cells. For example, viruses. Viruses usually grow in living cell or inside the host cell. So generally we can culture some of the microbes like bacteria and fungi in laboratories. So usually we culture these bacteria and fungi in nutrient media. Okay, we generally grow them or culture them in nutrient medium. So this nutrient medium may include various types of nutrients. So we can prepare the nutrient medium by adding the required nutrients, and then suppose if we want to grow them in a solid medium, we are going to add agar. You know that agar is a solidifying agent. So we take the required nutrients in required quantity, we add agar to it and prepare a solid medium, pour it to the petri plates or petri dishes, and then we inoculate a bacteria or fungi. Okay, so if we inoculate one bacterial cell or a fungal cell, then we within few, suppose if we give necessary growth condition or if we incubate them, we can observe the colonies of bacteria or colony of fungi. Okay, we cannot observe this bacteria, single bacterial cell or a fungal cell with our naked eyes, but we can observe or we can clearly see the colonies of bacteria or colonies of fungi that grow in petri plates. So colony is group of cells. So colony may be having thousands or lakhs of or millions of cells. So such group of cells together form colony. So colony can be easily visible or clearly observed without the aid of any microscope. Just to the naked eyes we can see the colonies, but bacterial cell or fungal cell is not visible to naked eyes. Okay, so we can clearly or we can easily culture these organisms like bacteria and fungi with the help of nutrient medium or by culturing them in nutrient medium. So next let us see what is the habitat of these microbes. So where are these microbes found? Microbes are found everywhere. They are found in air, water, they are found in soil, and they are also found in other animals as well as plants. And they are also found inside our body. Within the human body there are different types of microorganisms present, and that such microorganisms that are naturally present within our body are called as microflora. Okay, we will see what is the habitat of microbes. As I told, microbes are found in air, water, soil, air, water, soil. They are found on various plants, animals, and they are found also within the body of organism, inside our body, and they are known to be found even in such areas or such sites where no other life can exist. So they can also survive in such extreme conditions where no other life forms can exist. For example, so these microbes are found in thermal vents. They are found in thermal vents or deep in the geysers. Deep inside the geysers where there is very extreme condition. What extreme condition is found in thermal vents? Usually in thermal vents the temperature is very high to about 100 degrees. Okay. In addition to that, there are certain microbes which can also survive well in acidic medium, highly acidic medium. And there are certain microbes which are found in very colder climatic conditions, especially in deep or mainly found in the depth of the snow. They are found in the depth of the snow. Several meters below the layer of snow, several meters beneath the layer of snow, these microbes are found. And microbes are also present even deep inside the layer of soil, several meters deep in the layer of soil. These microorganisms are found. So microorganisms are found in various habitats. They are found even in the habitats where other organisms cannot exist or other organisms cannot survive. That is, even in extreme conditions, these microorganisms can survive. And as I told, there are various types of microorganisms that are naturally present within our body. So we generally term these microorganisms which are naturally present in our body as normal microflora. They are termed as normal microflora. So this normal microflora is essential to our body. So for example, in our gastrointestinal tract or the digestive tract, there are many such normal microflora present. So if normal microflora is present in our digestive tract, then it usually avoids colonization of pathogenic organisms in our digestive tract. Okay, so what is the benefit of the presence of normal microflora? They mainly help in preventing colonization of pathogenic organisms. What do you mean by colonization? Forming the colonies of pathogenic organisms. So if normal microflora are present in our digestive system or within our body, they mainly avoid or prevent colonization of pathogenic organisms within our body. In addition to that, there are certain microorganisms that are naturally found in our body are known to produce certain vitamins. Okay, so this is about the habitat of microbes, where they are found in various kinds of habitat even in extreme conditions. And as soon as we listen to the term microbes or microorganisms, immediately we think that these microorganisms are very harmful to mankind or they are very harmful to us. But you have to remember that in addition to, you know that already we have discussed how harmful they are and how they cause various types of infectious diseases. But there are many such microorganisms which are very useful to mankind. Mainly, there are certain microorganisms which are very beneficial to us. So in this particular chapter, that is microbes in human welfare, we are going to study about those microorganisms which are beneficial to mankind. So, and we will discuss how they are benefit to mankind, what are the benefits that we get by these microorganisms. Now let us discuss what are the benefits that we get in preparation of household products from the microbes. So microbes play a very important role in preparation of various types of household products. So some of those household products are preparation of curd from the milk, in preparation of idli or dosa batter, in making bread, in preparation of a traditional drink known as toddy, in fermented fish as well as meat, for fermentation of various types of vegetables like soya bean, cabbages as well as tender bamboo shoots, and also in preparation of cheese. So we will discuss about the role of microbes in preparation of all these household products one by one. So first we will see how microbes play an important role in preparation of curd from the milk. You know that at home we prepare curd. For preparation of curd, we take a bowl of milk, and for the bowl of milk, we will add 1 or 2 spoon of curd, right? So if you add 1 or 2 spoon of curd and to the milk, and if you place it for certain period of time in required temperature for about more than 35 to 40 degrees, then after certain period of time or after certain hour, curd will be prepared. So what actually happens or how actually the milk coagulates into curd or how the milk turns into curd. So whenever we prepare curd for milk, we usually add spoonful of curd. We add spoonful of curd to the milk. So the spoonful of curd that we are adding to the milk is called as starter or inoculum. It is called as starter or inoculum. So what does the starter or inoculum consist of? The starter or inoculum mainly have large number of bacteria. Okay, so this bacteria play an important role in converting milk into curd. So what type of bacteria are present in curd? Curd mainly has millions of lactobacillus in it. Okay, they have got millions of lactobacillus or lactic acid bacteria in it. Okay, so that's why we use a spoonful of curd as a starter or inoculum for preparing curd. Now, how does this lactobacillus act upon this milk and how it converts it into curd? So, the lactobacillus that is present in the inoculum or the starter, it usually acts upon the carbohydrates or the sugars that are present in the milk. You know that milk has got sugar known as lactose, right? Milk has sugar called lactose. So this lactobacillus acts upon this lactose and converts the lactose into lactic acid. Converts lactose into lactic acid. So by the role of lactobacillus, lactose is converted into lactic acid. Now lactic acid is formed in the milk. Okay, the lactose got converted into lactic acid. So this lactic acid then plays an important role in partially digesting the milk protein. Lactic acid starts converting the milk protein. You know that milk has got a protein known as casein. Milk has got a protein known as casein. So this milk protein is partially digested by the lactic acid. Milk protein gets partially digested or it undergoes coagulation or it coagulates. Okay. So lactic acid starts partially digesting the milk protein or it coagulates the milk protein. That's why you get the sour taste of the curd. Okay, sour taste of the curd. So this is how lactobacillus play an important role in making curd or in preparing curd or in converting milk into curd. And as compared to milk, curd is highly nutritious. Okay, you have to remember that curd is highly nutritious compared to milk. So this curd has got enhanced nutritional qualities. This is mainly because while milk is converted into curd, its nutrient quality will be enhanced. So usually enhancement, there will be enhancement of a vitamin named vitamin B12. Okay, in curd has got enhanced nutritional qualities. Enhanced nutritional qualities, especially it will be enhanced with vitamin B12. Vitamin B12. And normally we have the habit or we are used to take curds at the end of a meal, right? So whenever we take curd rice or we take curd at the end of the meal, that also plays an important, you know that curd has got large number of lactobacillus. Lactobacillus are very essential because they enhance the nutritional quality of the curd. In addition to that, they also produce vitamin B12. And lactobacillus, once we take the curd or when we have curd at the end of the meal, usually this lactobacillus will be present in our digestive system, and the presence of lactobacillus can mainly avoid colonization of other bacteria. So that's why having curd at the end of the meal is very good. Okay? So this is about the role of microbes in preparation of curd. Okay? How milk gets converted into curd. So next let us discuss about preparation of idli or dosa batter. How microbes play an important role in preparing fermented idli or dosa batter. So generally when we prepare idli or dosa, so next we'll see What's the role of microbes in preparation of idli or dosa batter? So normally we prepare dosa or idli batter at night, and we'll keep it for overnight for fermentation. So if the batter is well fermented, then the idli or dosa that is prepared from the well fermented batter will be very soft, right? So this is mainly because the here, especially in preparation of idli or dosa batter, microbes play a very important role. You know that for idli or dosa we usually take ingredients like rice as well as urad dal or black gram. So this black gram will be having the normal flora or normal microorganisms in them. For example, they have got a microbe known as leuconostoc. Microbe known as leuconostoc. So they generally help in fermenting the batter. So if the batter is well fermented, so after fermented, so morning we take up this fermented batter and we prepare idli or dosa. So whatever idli or dosa that is prepared from well fermented batter, it will be very soft. This is mainly because after fermentation, when we steam this idli or when we prepare dosa from out of well fermented dosa or idli batter, usually carbon dioxide will be released. So since large amount of carbon dioxide will be released, you know that all the fermentation process releases, especially the alcoholic fermentation process releases carbon dioxide. When carbon dioxide is released, usually the dosa or idli becomes very soft. Okay, so this is the role of microbes, especially in preparation of dosa or idli. So next we will see about preparation of bread. So how bread is prepared? So usually for preparation of bread, we take ingredients like wheat, maida or all-purpose flour. So for that wheat or maida or all-purpose flour, we usually add certain microbes, fermenting microbes like yeast. So for preparation of bread, we take either wheat or maida or all-purpose flour. So for that we add yeast. Okay. So yeast helps in fermentation of the ingredient that we have taken. So we usually need this wheat flour or maida flour to which yeast is added. Okay. We need it so that whenever we need it, a dough is formed. Whenever we need it, a dough is formed. Usually we keep this dough for rest for certain period of time. Okay, we allow it to rest for certain period of time. So during this period, yeast acts upon the substrates that are present in wheat or maida flour, and they undergo fermentation process. So because of fermentation process, you might have observed if the dough is kept for certain period of time, it raises. The dough raises. So this raising of dough is mainly because of fermentation process. Raising of dough is mainly because of fermentation process. We call that raised dough as, or this phenomenon is known as leavening. Leavening of dough. Raising of dough is nothing but leavening of dough. Leavening of dough. So we take this leavened dough and then we prepare the bread out of it. So during baking, when we take the leavened dough and when we bake it, usually alcohol and carbon dioxide will be released. Because of release of carbon dioxide, the bread becomes very soft. Okay, the bread becomes very soft because of release of carbon dioxide. So this is how yeast plays an important role in fermenting the dough, especially for preparation of bread. And yeast, the scientific name of the yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is the scientific name of yeast. So Saccharomyces cerevisiae or this yeast is commonly known as baker's yeast or brewer's yeast. Baker's yeast, or it is also known as brewer's yeast, because this yeast, especially this species of yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, is extensively used in baking industries and brewing industries. For the preparation of bread and also for the preparation of alcoholic beverages, we use this yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So they are commonly called as baker's yeast or brewer's yeast. So next, let us discuss about the preparation of traditional drink toddy. You know that toddy is a traditional drink, especially in most of the parts of South India. In most of the parts of South India, it may be in Kerala, some parts of Karnataka as well as Tamil Nadu, they use toddy as a traditional drink. So this toddy is mainly obtained from the palm tree. Okay, mainly from the palm tree, toddy or the traditional drink toddy is extracted or it is obtained. So usually from the palm tree, especially the spadix of the palm tree, spadix or spadices of the palm tree, they make a small incision or small cut in the spadix of the palm tree, and from these the sap oozes out. Sap oozes out, and this sap is collected in earthen pots. Sap is collected in earthen pots and which is nothing but toddy. Okay, so toddy is mainly obtained from the sap of palm, from the saps of palm trees. Sap of palm trees, usually toddy is obtained. So palm trees have got spadix. So if we make a small incision in the spadix, sap start oozing out, and that sap will be collected in earthen pots. So usually this drink toddy is used on the day on which it is collected. So within a few hours, if it is, or it will be sweet, or it will be tastier if it is used on the day it is collected. Suppose if you keep this toddy as such for a few hours, maybe after 12 hours, usually it becomes very sour because of naturally occurring microorganisms, and they start fermenting this toddy. It becomes very sour in taste. So once it gets sour taste, it can also be used in the preparation of vinegar. Okay, it is also used in the preparation of vinegar. So next we will see how fish and meat as well as various types of vegetables are fermented and they are used in the preparation of various types of food items. So we will see what are those vegetables and meat that are usually fermented and stored. For fish is usually fermented and stored, and even meat is also fermented and stored. In market you get various types of sausages, chicken sausage or various types of meat sausages. So they are mainly fermented and they are stored such that they can be used for preparation of various types of food items. The same way, various types of vegetables are fermented and they are stored. For example, tender bamboo shoots, soya bean as well as cabbages. Okay, and from the soya bean, fermented soya bean, they use various types of preparations, especially in countries like Japan as well as China. They use various products of this soya bean. They take the extracts of soya bean and they prepare various products like sufu, tofu. You might have heard about these products which are extensively used in China as well as Japan, and even tempeh. So these are mainly prepared from soya bean, and even cabbages are finely chopped and they are fermented and they are stored. They use it in various restaurants. So it is called as sauerkraut. Sauerkraut, where cabbages are mainly chopped. They are finely chopped and they are fermented and they are stored and used as food, or it is used for preparation of various types of food items. So in this way, fermented meat as well as fermented vegetables are usually stored such that it can be used for preparation of various types of food items. So next we will see preparation of cheese and what are the microorganisms that are involved in preparation of cheese. So cheese is usually prepared from milk, or it is also prepared from the extract of soya bean, or from the soya milk also it is prepared. So for the preparation of cheese we use various types of microorganisms. So based on the type of microorganism that we use for the cheese preparation, there are various types of cheese, and even the characteristic feature of the cheese also varies. So we will see some of the types of cheese. So there is a type of cheese known as Swiss cheese. Type of cheese known as Swiss cheese, and there is one more type of cheese known as Roquefort cheese. Roquefort cheese. Okay, so here cheese is prepared by using various types of microbes. So microbes are mainly used for preparation of these cheese. So based on this, the characteristic feature of the cheese varies. So cheese may give various flavors, the taste may vary, and even the texture of the cheese may vary. Okay? So the characteristic feature of the cheese varies based on the type of microorganism that is used for the preparation of cheese. So we will see what are the types of microorganisms that we use for preparation of Swiss cheese and Roquefort cheese. So Swiss cheese is mainly used by the use of a microbe known as Propionibacterium shermani. Propionibacterium shermani. So this is a microbe that we use for the preparation of Swiss cheese. Okay. So in Swiss cheese, usually you might have observed large holes. So this large hole is mainly because of release of large amount of carbon dioxide. So since there is liberation of large amount of carbon dioxide, Swiss cheese has got very large holes. So Roquefort cheese also has got various taste as well as texture. So this is mainly because we use a different microorganism for the preparation of Roquefort cheese. And the type of microbe that we use for the preparation of Roquefort cheese is a fungus named Penicillium roqueforti. Penicillium roqueforti. So since we use a different microorganism for the preparation of Roquefort cheese, it has got a different taste, flavor as well as texture. Okay. So this is how we get various types of benefits from microorganisms in preparation of various household products. So we have discussed about the role of microbes in preparation of curd from the milk, preparation of idli or dosa batter, preparation of bread, toddy, the traditional drink, fermented fish or meat, fermented bamboo shoot, soybean or cabbages, and preparation of cheese. So next we have to discuss about the microbes in industrial products. What is the role of microbes in production of various industrial products, especially in large scale?